Welcome to Thursday's Big Blue Kickoff live combine coverage from Indianapolis. John Schmeelk, Paul Dottino here in the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. Of course, Big Blue Kickoff Live is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. Paul, first day of workouts coming up today at the NFL Combine. We get the guys up front on defense, the front seven, defensive linemen, edge players, and linebackers. You saw a lot of those guys at the podium yesterday. Sonny Styles, as impressive as advertised from our guest. The guy talks like a coach, has the demeanor of one as well. Really good temperament. But we had a chance to watch a lot of the podiums from here, which was fun. But now we start to see the on-the-field stuff today. So we get to see some 40 times. We got some measurements in this morning, which we'll talk about too. But this is when the fun really starts.
Yeah, I mean, the drills are all going to take place over the next several days. You know, you'll watch them on NFL Network. And I guess the thing that really excites me about it, John, is that, you know, we're looking at a guy like, let's say, Banks, right? The defensive tackle, who we know had the foot injury in the past. And he said at this podium, you know, I don't care if I run a 5 or whatever. You know, they know I'm going to give them everything I got, every play I get. And he doesn't seem that concerned about it. And actually, he had a great attitude that basically like, hey, the drills are the drills. They're going to be what they're going to be. He knows his body type. He knows he's not going to run, you know, a 4 flat. He gets that. He wants to let his tape speak for itself. And I thought that was a little odd in that you get all these guys who do specialty combine training for the Underwear Olympics because they know so much significance is put on it. And he was just of the attitude that I'm a football player. You watch me play, you know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I'm sure he cares about that 10-yard split, though, which is what people are paying attention to.
That one maybe.
A couple big measurements this morning, and we've talked about this a little bit. Ruben Bane measured in 270 pounds, arm length of 30 inches and only 7/8, so under 31-inch arms for Ruben Bane, which, again, really, really short. More of a power rusher, so not quite as important, but still, you don't like to see that. Cassius Howell, we also knew he was going to come in with shorter arms. He came in at 6'2", 253, 30.25-inch arms, so even shorter than Ruben Bane. Yeah. And then the third player, again, arm length, Woods, the defensive tackle out of Clemson.
Yep.
And why am I not seeing him on this list here? He should be on this list. He came in measuring at under 31-inch arms as well. So it's one of those deals where you take a look at some of these measurements for the defensive linemen, and the Woods thing actually makes sense to me because you watch him on tape ball. He's winning mostly with kind of quickness and, you know, his agility and not really with length and power. So a lot of that makes sense to me. But these are numbers that, you know, if you're debating between Woods and Howell and another, like a Banks or a Zion Young at the end of the first round, like, do you pick the other guy? Is that the tiebreaker for you? So
it could be.
That's where some of these measurements come into effect.
The Woods one is curious to me. I talked to a scout about Woods because I initially liked him a lot when I first started to look at some stuff. And then the more I looked, the more I was like, I'm not sure what he is. Because if you want, originally the number I saw for him was 315 pounds. John, you told me this morning he came in under 300.
Here we go. Peter Woods, David Jeremiah, 6'0", 2.5, 298 pounds, 31-inch arms, and 9-inch hands. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a problem if you were hoping you could add 10 pounds of muscle and beef on him and have him play standard defensive tackle. That's not going to work. Not if he's under 300.
So let's go down to the combine now and say hello from Pro Football Focus. Some news around that. We're not going to touch that, Trevor. Don't worry. Trevor Sikkema joining us from the Combine in Indianapolis. Also, the Stock Exchange NFL Draft podcast with Connor Rogers, who'll join us tomorrow on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Trev, how's Indy, my friend? Hope all is well.
It is great. Miss you guys. Obviously, wish you could be here. Combine's not the same without you, but I'm glad that I'm getting on before Connor so that I can get all the stock exchange takes out right now. So
there you go.
He's going to sound like a copycat for me when you guys have him on tomorrow. No,
wait a minute. We're going to have to accuse you now of insider trading.
What happened? Oh, with me getting on early. Okay.
Exactly.
And you can also trash him a little bit if you want to, and then people can be prepared when he comes on.
I would never. I could never.
All right, so we were just talking about it, Trev. Some of the measurements that came in this morning. Woods, Bane, Howell. Bane and Howell wasn't a surprise. Woods, I had not heard he was going to come in with those shorter arms. Now, when I think back to the tape, he never really won with length and it, to me on the tape. So I guess that makes sense to me. But you wonder if, especially for Woods, who also had terrible production this year, if that could push him out of the first round.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's I don't think that it's going to be out of the first round, but we've seen some mock drafts from notable people within the business, people who, talk with NFL teams, are very well plugged in, where he sort of continued to drop from, okay, now he was a top 10 pick, now it's in the teens, now it's in the 20s. And so ultimately, I do think that he's going to be a back end of the first round pick, but this week certainly didn't help. But he's got to test really, really well. And some of the 40 numbers I've seen from him are pretty ambitious, to be honest. Like there's the over-under was like a 4.83, 4.84. That's fast for a defensive tackle, even one who is sub 300 pounds. So if he tests like that kind of an athlete, I think that we're solidifying things with him being a back end of the first round guy. But I mean, when you look at his measurables, I believe the arm length for him was 4th percentile for defensive tackles. The wingspan was just 10th percentile for defensive tackles. Mason Graham from Michigan last year, right? He had all of the length concerns, everything. Mason Graham had longer arms and a longer wingspan than Peter Woods.
And better tape.
He had better tape. He did have better tape and more productive tape. And I saw somebody on Twitter, X, of course, sorry, old habits, muscle memory. I saw somebody talking about Peter Woods' measurables and we're saying Milton Williams kind of had the same measurables. It's like, okay, well, he does not play anything like Milton Williams. So I don't think you are allowed to kind of make that comparison there. Like just because the measurables aren't the same, the player is not nearly the same. So I do still like Peter Woods, but I mean, with measurables like that, unless he tests truly off the charts as an elite athlete, it's hard to see him getting into the top 20 like he once was. It feels like he's much more of a back end of the first round guy.
Trevor, I'm looking at your PFF big board, which just came out yesterday, at least according to the date that's stamped on the internet page. And Ruben Bane Jr. is number 2 on the PFF ranking. Now, after this morning's numbers, do you guys think you may want to adjust that a little bit?
I don't, to be honest with you. Like I understand that him versus other players in other draft classes may, bring down the excitement of what he is. But the fact of the matter is that the player pool this year is what it is. And when I watched edge rushers, I went through, about 20 of them for final scouting reports a couple of weeks ago. He's the best. And I didn't have any reservations about that. And so we've always known that his arms were shorter. It's kind of a little bit like John was talking about a couple of minutes ago, Peter Woods' arms are short, but he never really won with length at the college level. So it's not like you're looking at a part of his game that's not exactly replicable going to the NFL. And that's the same thing with Ruben Bane, in my opinion. Bane's not really winning with long arms, right? He's not really winning with that long arm move with length. He was always somebody who was winning with power. He won with technique. His position coach at Miami, of course, the Hall of Famer, Jason Taylor, there's no fat on any of his reps, right? He is launching off the front foot. There's no false steps. There's no, unnecessary body movement or hand movement. He is winning clean consistently. That doesn't change when we now verify the fact that he's got an under 31-inch arm. So I wish the arms were longer. Of course I do. But I still think that this is a top 3 player in this class and somebody that I would consider for the Jets at number 2 overall. I really would.
Wow. Now, I had a scout tell me this week that if he doesn't really work out well on the edge, we like his skill set as a 3 technique.
Totally.
Would you even consider doing that?
Yeah, I would. Now, I wouldn't fully move him inside right off the bat. I think he does have a ton of versatility, and I think he is good enough as an edge rusher. He won as a stand-up 2-point stance guy, outside linebacker type. He's won with his hand in the dirt. Obviously, we saw him do most of the time this past season. But there's a lot of people who I remember going into the year were like, is this the next Kalijah Cansey, actually? Because he's built very similarly. He's got that quickness. He plays with that violence. And so, to me, it's funny. He's a little bit of one of those prospects that you go, okay, yeah, I'd let him play offensive tackle, but if he's not an offensive tackle, we know we got a damn good guard that we could play. As somebody who's got like an all-pro ceiling, maybe a guard. That feels like it might be the case for the Ruben Bane, where it's like, okay, we play him at edge, we'll see what he's like at edge, but we feel like we've got somebody who might be a damn good defensive tackle as well, if if the scheme allows it to be the case.
And by the way, just play him on the edge on early downs when teams want to run it, because he's so good at defending the edge as a run defender. And then on passing situations, you put him at three tech. I mean, I don't think it's that complicated, to be honest with you.
I agree. There's so much versatility. My co-host at the PFF NFL show, Dalton Wasserman, pointed this out to me about midway through Miami season. He's like, watch what Miami does. They'll align themselves in an under front consistently, where there's 3 defensive linemen to the left side of the line of scrimmage, and then there's just Ruben Bane to the right side. They'll give teams the ability to have numbers 2 Bane's side and essentially dare teams run at him. We dare you. And a lot of times when they did, he'd be able to handle things pretty well. So schematically, I think that Bane is one of these kind of change the math type of players when you're talking about gaps and getting a hat on a hat.
I had not looked at your big board until today, Trevor, and it just shows what a weird year this is. Because, by the way, and my rankings are almost identical to what you guys have here. You have Caleb Downs at 3, safety. Jeremiah Love at 4, running back. Sonny Styles at 5, off-ball linebacker. Arvell Reese at 6, off-ball linebacker, people trying to convert to an edge. And then you eventually have Carnell Tate checking in at 8 here as the first wide receiver. As the Giants consider who they pick at 5, how do you sort through that group? I'm going to assume Arvell Reese is not going to make it to the Giants at 5, but for the rest of those guys, how would you sort through that if you're Joe Shane, John Harbaugh, and the Giants?
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like, I think that, of course, you want high positional value guys, but positional value versus best player available has never been more conflicting in a draft class than it feels like it is this year. And so I think that you kind of you have to lean a little bit more into that best player available, like Sonny Styles. I think I'm going to end up with Sonny Styles as a top 5 player in this class, and somebody who I think he is a takeover type of player. He changes the defense at the centerpiece position. That Indiana game that Sonny Styles has is the best game of any prospect I have watched at any position in this draft class. It is like he had a crystal ball and knew what it actually is. It was almost as if the frequency of the radio was switched and his helmet had the offensive coordinator's calls in it, because that's how he knew. I mean, he knew exactly where the ball was going from tape study, getting there with athleticism. And so, yeah, I mean, him, Caleb Downs, like, these are guys that, from positional value standpoint, you wouldn't consider them in the top 5 that I would say that in this class you need to do, which also makes it very interesting from Arvell Reese's perspective, because at the podium here at the Combine, he talked about, he's like, no, like, I'm an edge rusher. Like, I want to be an edge rusher, an outside linebacker. And look, he probably got a good agent. That's probably why he's saying that, because edge rushers get paid more money. So I think that probably goes into it. But if you look at his pure edge rush tape, got a long way to go. He's got a long way to go as an edge rusher. So does that go into the equation? Do all of a sudden maybe teams viewed his off-ball linebacker tape better and had him ranked higher, and now that you have to rank him as just an edge player, do you go, well, okay, well, now I don't really think you're one of the top 8 players in this class? I think it's all over the place for who could get picked where in the top 5.
I'm interested in the comments you just made about Reese, because on your board, he's just one notch at 6 ahead of David Bailey, who is 7. And most people think if you're just talking about pure production as a pure edge rusher, he might be the best guy.
Yeah. So that board is with me thinking that Reese was more of an off-ball linebacker. Now that I kind of will have to view him as an edge, I think that will shake. Obviously, the boards will change after the Combine with the measurables and everything anyways, but that's going to change a little bit for me, where I've always kind of felt like, yeah, hey, look, I like Arvell Reese. I like what he could be, but he still is a what could be type of a player. So I think that where he lands, the type of defensive coordinator that he gets, how customizable he's going to be with where he aligns, a lot of that goes into it. So I wonder if I will eventually have David Bailey ahead of Arvell Reese, because I know what Bailey is, at least as a pass rusher, where sure, there's highs of Arvell Reese, but here's just an example, because somebody had looked this up the other day. When you think of these guys who are off-ball players recently who kind of like turned into edge rushers, Abdul Carter, for example, Giants obviously know him very well. His pass rush win percentage, even as an off-ball linebacker with Penn State, was in the 20s. It was like 23, 24%. Micah Parsons, 23% when he was a pass rusher as a linebacker coming out of college. Arvell Reese is 13%. So, like, it's not even close to what those other guys were. And we're talking about him getting drafted in the same range as guys like Parsons and Abdul Carter. It just goes into the fascination, I think, with just how unique this draft class is with the types of players that are good.
Trevor, the Giants don't pick Sonny Styles at 5, and they decided to try to get an off-ball linebacker later in this draft. I think this is one of the deeper and better off-ball linebacker classes we've seen. Who are some of the guys you like on day 2 that could interest the Giants if they decide to go off-ball linebacker, or even maybe early round 4?
Yeah, I think that it's a really great linebacker class, and I think that that's what makes this class so unique and why defense could really rule the day in the top 100 is because you always have a lot of edge rushers. You always have defensive tackles that you can pick. You always have corners. But specifically, linebacker and safety are really deep this year, which makes it a very robust and deep overall defensive class. So for the linebacker spots, yeah, I mean, Sonny Styles option for them at number 5. I don't think C.J. Allen makes it to them in the second round, although he would be an excellent option if he did. But then I think after Sonny Styles and C.J. Allen, that's when you sort of get into the what's your flavor of linebacker that you like? Do you want a thumper in the middle? Do you want a true Mike? Do you want a middle linebacker? Do you want somebody who's more of a Will? Do you want somebody who's a Sam, who's closer to like an edge rusher? Because I got different examples for each of them. If you want more of a middle linebacker type, I think a Jacob Rodriguez, a Deontay Lawson, maybe those two guys are sort of those middle linebacker type of players for you. If you want somebody who's a little bit more of a Will, he's going to play a little bit more in space, maybe play in the slot more for you. You've got Anthony Hill Jr. from Texas. You've got Kyle Lewis from Pittsburgh. Those are two options there. If you want somebody who's a little bit more of a Sam, can play close to the line of scrimmage as much as also at the second level. Jake Golday from Cincinnati is a player who I think a lot of teams could like. And so it really just comes down to what type of linebacker that they would want, but it's a deep enough class to where you feel like you could get some good value on whatever role you're trying to fill.
By the way, folks, if you want to deep dive on more of Trevor's opinions on the guys at the Senior Bowl, we did a long huddle podcast with him a couple weeks ago, Joe. Go check that out. And if Trevor, tell the folks where they can find your other content if they want to see more of your great work.
Sure. Yeah. PFF.com. Obviously, you guys pulling up the big board, everything like that. If you guys want to run your own mock drafts, you can do so with the PFF Mock Draft Simulator. Then, of course, as the hat says that I am wearing here, the NFL Stock Exchange podcast, myself and Connor Rogers covering the NFL Draft 365.
Trevor, good stuff, my friend. Enjoy the combine.
Take care.
Appreciate it, guys.
That's Trevor Sikkema. Now let's go to our next guest. We had a chance to talk to Dave Hellman from The Athletic. And now we welcome in, back in Indianapolis, from The Athletic, co-host of The Athletic Football Show with Robert Mays and Derek Klassen, the one and only Dave Hellman. Dave, good to talk to you, man. How's Indy?
John, I understand why you're not here, but like you get to Radio Row and like you expect to see all the familiar faces and the familiar backdrop. I was looking for you, and I'm devastated that we're doing this virtually, but it's good to be on.
Yes, always good to talk to you, man. And me and you are kind of kindred spirits, but I feel like we live a similar life here. You co-host Building the Beast with Dane Brugler on the Athletic Football Show, and I host Draft Season with Tony Pauline. And both of us also have to cover the NFL while we're trying to keep track of the draft. And every so often, I get to a point where I think I have a really good point about a player, and I bring it up. And then Tony just goes on this like opus about this guy that I had just learned about. And he goes on for like 3 minutes. And I feel about this big when I actually do try to follow the college stuff of the draft really closely. But then you're like, man, I am just along for the ride here, aren't I? How many times do you get that working with Dane on the draft?
Oh, man. Unfortunately, self-awareness is, I think, one of my best traits. And so I know I'm just here to lob the meatballs up to Dane and let Dane really do his thing. But that you're so right, because I will like have a moment where, yeah, like I'm watching college football all through the season. I'm keeping tabs on these guys. I'm the little bit of free time I do have, I'm trying to be up to date. And yeah, like I'll bring a player to Dane and be like, hey, did you hear about this guy? And like Dane he's a pro's pro and he's the nicest guy in the world. So he's never gonna go out of his way to make me feel like he'll just smirk and be like, yeah, dude, obviously I'm like, yes, he's a top 100 pick. Of course I know about that guy. And I'm just like, what am I doing trying to match wits with Dane Brugler? Yes, I identify with that very much.
And by the way, did you know that he's the third youngest brother, played pickleball professionally in junior high school, and also bakes a mean brioche bread. I mean, it's unbelievable with these guys.
I saw Dane like an hour ago, and just very casually, I was like, "So, like, what have we learned today, Dane?" And I thought he was just gonna hit like the big beats of the day, and he was like, "Well, did you know this guy had this big of a growth spurt between his 9th and 10th grade years?" I was like, "My God, Dane!"
Yes,
that's why he's the GOAT.
And indeed he is. We are now a couple of days into this whole combine situation, and as the week progresses, as we know, there are a lot of GMs and agents and coaches and stuff who are sharing stories and talking about prospective deals. So why don't we just start here with two of the biggest names in the NFL who are being bandied about as to what their future is going to be. That would be Trey Hendrickson and Max Crosby. What are you hearing in terms of scuttlebutt out at the combine as to where those guys might wind up playing their football in September?
You know, I think Crosby is the one that generates the most interest because Hendrickson is, you know, he's going to be able to do whatever he wants. But we've been following this Max Crosby saga for so long. And it finally feels like it's at a breaking point. I know General Manager John Spytek said earlier this week at the Combine that he expects him to be on the team this year, which I love that phrasing because, like, you can expect a lot of things, but when the right offer comes through, you can expect to do a trade with somebody for 2 first-round picks if the right deal materializes. So this is just a gut feeling from talking to people and listening to the scuttlebutt. I think this is the year that something finally happens with Max Crosby. It's tough to say who that would be, right? And we joke about it on our show all the time. The most fun teams that need a piece like that are typically the most stretched thin. You know, like it's easy to say, "Oh, yeah, he would really put the Buffalo Bills over the top," but with what cap space and with what, you know? Yeah, exactly. So it's tough to identify that landing spot. You know, the Packers come to mind, but they did their thing last year. I don't foresee them trying to swing another trade for an all-pro pass rusher. But I think somebody with the means to make it happen and realistic thoughts of being a contender, I think this is the year that it finally comes through. I'd love to see him in Tampa Bay. That is a team that tends to rely on the draft and develop their own guys. So I don't know how realistic that is, but I think it would be a really fun pairing of a talent meeting a need and obviously a head coach that would know how to use him in Todd Bowles. But that's just me wishfully thinking.
Pushing the quarterbacks aside for a second, Dave, when you look at either free agency or the trade market, what are the other big names or stories that you're monitoring? And, you know, every year there's a few things that everyone waits to happen before other people can move and do other things. So other than the quarterbacks, what are some of the other players or people or topics or whatever that you're keeping an eye on this offseason that could really mold what this NFL offseason and player acquisition process looks like?
One big name that comes to mind for me, and I've talked about him a few times, but Alec Pierce does not really fit the archetype of like the big money free agent that we all talk about. You know, like this year's receiver that everybody would talk about would be George Pickens, obviously coming off of an all-pro year. We know the Cowboys are going to franchise tag him. I don't think the general populace thinks of Alec Pierce as this big money free agent that's going to make this insane deal. If the Colts let him get to free agency, I think that would happen. Like his age, the fact that he's an ascending player at the end of his rookie contract, what the explosive downfield element that he can bring to an offense. I think the Colts are going to be very motivated to not let him hit the market, but I'm very fascinated by the number that he could get if that were to happen. And I think it would surprise a lot of people because I don't think the average fan thinks of him as like this blockbuster player, but I think the league does. And then the other thing that I'm really interested in is, you know, not to bring up sore subjects in New York, guys, but the running back, you know, we've been on this saga with running backs where is it valued correctly? How much should you pay a running back? What's the market look like? And I just think this is a fun year of free agency for running backs. Obviously, like the Cowboys already got it. got a deal done with Javonte Williams, but Etienne is out there this year. Tyler Algier. I know there's at least one more big name guy that I'm not thinking of, but
Kenneth Walker and Breece Hall. Kenneth Walker and Breece Hall.
Thank you so much, John. I knew that there were more. I'm curious to see how the league values that and like what these guys can command on the open market. I think, I think the running game is circling back around on us, and I think those guys are going to be in demand, even though the prevailing logic for the last 10 or so years has been we don't want to pay those guys. I think that's about to change.
Well, let's talk about the marketplace for a minute. The Giants have 3 higher-profile free agents. 2 of them are really solid players at very important positions. That would be Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle, Cordell Flott at corner, and then, of course, we know Wan'Dale Robinson at wide receiver. It's not a great free agent wide receiver class, so maybe he might be the second or third guy. He's going to be high on the list, I think, with a lot of people who want to buy a wide receiver. So with those 3 guys, how much of a marketplace do you think there will be as the Giants try to figure out if they can afford to keep any of the 3?
I mean, right off the bat, Illuminor is a big one for me. Just there aren't any tackles in the NFL. Like good tackle play is hard to come by. Those guys are not usually available. When they become available, they are paid very handsomely. I mean, shoot, it was last year when Dan Moore got that enormous deal in Tennessee, and everybody at the time was like, Is this an $80 million player? Like, did we see that when he was in Pittsburgh? And the market says, yeah, he is. When those guys come available, they get big paydays. So I hope the Giants find a way to hang on to Illuminor. I love the way he rides for y'all's franchise. Like, he is a very vocally like pro-Giant and like really seems to love representing the franchise and gets what being a Giant is all about. So I hope the Giants find a way to keep him, but I think that's a very expensive proposition. And I think you're right. Scarcity at receiver is probably something that's going to inflate Wan'Dale Robinson's market a little bit. Flott is interesting to me. Which John, I mean, you know, I'm a shameless LSU alum. I think he had a very nice season, but I'm curious for y'all's thought on what that might mean for his market. Sitting here right now, I'm like, would somebody pay him like CB1 money? Like, I don't think I see that, but am I off base? What do y'all think?
No, I'm thinking like Chidobe Awuzie money, like 10-ish, 11-ish, somewhere in that area, maybe.
The one thing that really hurts him is that over his Giants career, durability has been an issue.
Well, he weighs 180 pounds soaking wet. I mean, it's going to happen.
But I'm with you in terms of when he came out of LSU. John will tell you, I was like president of his fan club. I love the kid's ability to play boundary corner. He's got length. He's got anticipation. He closes. He's smart. There's a lot to like about him, but you know, tell me the last time he stayed on the field for an entire season. That's going to be part of the price.
That's a valid point. And I think that everything we just said gives me confidence. Like, maybe of the 3, if I was like power ranking them based on confidence they stay in New York, I think I'd say I feel the best about Flott.
So, Dave, I'm going to go here because obviously Giant fans are over the moon over the hire of John Harbaugh, and they should be. We were too. I thought it was the easiest decision for a franchise that has been adrift since 2017 to bring in a guy that knows how to win. No-brainer move, you have to do it. But I think you, Robert, and Derek do a nice job of talking about what some of the pitfalls and potential traps are for hiring a CEO head coach that's not a play caller and how that can sometimes work against you a little bit. Talk to our listeners a little bit to give the other side of the coin, in fairness for equal time, what some of the pitfalls are for hiring a Harbaugh-type coach and what he's done, and maybe some of the problems that can arise when you don't have that top play caller on either side be your head coach.
Well, it's certainly not to say you can't be successful, right? Because obviously John Harbaugh has been very successful, but I think the reason people gravitate toward play callers as head coaches, or the reason people get excited about them, is because it is a very distinct calling card that you can point to on game day and say, this is what he does. He elevates our offense to this degree, or our defense, whatever unit it is. But the way that he calls it, the way that he executes it, his feel for it gives us an advantage on game day. And it also gives us sustainability, because as long as he's our coach, he's going to be in charge of that. And I think that's one of the biggest problems for more CEO type of head coaches is, I don't want to say you're only as good as your last hire, but it is an enormous part of this, right? And even the best coaches can get those things wrong. Like if you make a bad OC hire, if Matt Nagy's not the guy that's going to bring continue Jackson Dart's development, then where do you find that guy? Do you find that guy in time to make the most out of Jackson Dart's rookie contract? And I think that can be a very real pitfall. And then obviously, you look back at Baltimore. I think these are problems the Giants would kill to have, but Baltimore's inability to take advantage of some very, very good teams over the last few years. I do think that gives you pause, but ultimately, I know people use this phrase all the time, but I expect Harbaugh to be a floor raiser. If the Giants can get to a place where they're regularly in the playoff mix, then let's worry about getting over the hump in the playoffs when we get there. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I don't think too many people around here would have a problem with that. Let me keep it in the division because there's still a lot of talk about the Eagles. Of course, the whole A.J. Brown thing seems to be hovering over that campus, if you will. Your thoughts as to how this NFC East looks going into the offseason, because we do know that whether or not Harbaugh landed this coaching job or not, there are a lot of people who do think the Giants could be on the way up and closing the gap with some of these other clubs.
I think all four teams in the NFC East are probably sitting in their building right now, or well, they're in Indy right now, but you get my point. They're all sitting there saying, why not us? Why aren't we 2 or 3 moves away from being on top of the division? I mean, I know we know what it looks like when Philly's good. That was just last year. So you don't even need to spend a lot of time wondering how Philly could get there, but Dallas obviously has the offense of a contender. They have 2 first-round draft picks. They've got some money to spend if they ever decide they want to do that. So I don't think the Cowboys are very far away from being a pretty darn good team if they hit on a couple draft picks and invest some money in their defense. The Giants, you've got Harbaugh. Jackson Dart showed so much promise. You've got one of the most talented fronts in the NFL. I love Denard Wilson, guys. Like, I am such a fan of that hire. So you talk about a guy who can do some creative stuff on the back end, probably get more out of the secondary than what the Giants have seen in recent years. And if you're unlocking the front the way that the talent suggests you can, Malik Neighbors is coming back from injury. Like, it's not hard to imagine a world where the Giants make a couple moves in the next 8 weeks and are a much friskier team. And then Washington didn't have their quarterback all last year. And I know they got a lot of other problems. They got like the oldest roster in the NFL. They're going to have a bunch of defensive turnover. But if Jaden Daniels is healthy and good, we also know what that can look like. So I really think, even though like Philly is the only one of the 4 that looks like a contender today, I think all 4 of these teams have reason to be optimistic that they could be, kind of a dark horse heading into the summer.
Dave, tell the folks where they can find all your great work building the beast and everything else that you're doing for The Athletic.
So I co-host the Athletic Football Show. You can find us wherever you get podcasts. We're on YouTube as well, talking all things NFL. Dane Brugler and myself also do Building the Beast. We talk about everybody from Fernando Mendoza all the way down to the 7th round picks, and Dane knows everything about all of them. So please come find us wherever you get your podcasts.
Dave, enjoy Indy, my friend. Have some shrimp cocktail for us.
Be good.
Good talking to y'all.
We thank Dave Hellman for joining us right here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. And now we head back to Indianapolis. And we welcome in, from All City Network, covers the Philadelphia Eagles and the NFL Draft, Fran Duffy. Fran, what's going on, man? Good to see your face.
Good to see you guys. Hope everything's going well back there in the Northeast.
Well, I mean, as someone from the Northeast, you know what we're dealing with out here, and it has not been fun. Yes. But we're here. We have dug out. So you were, Fran obviously does a great job covering the draft, and he is. I always like to talk to him after each podium session because we listen to different guys. We kind of trade notes on kind of what we've heard. So DBs were this morning, Fran. What did you kind of walk away from this DB group? We've talked about the guys at the top. So if the Giants don't go DB at the top, looking for corner, safety, 2nd round, 3rd round, who are some of the guys that might have jumped out at you today?
Yeah, it's funny because you usually walk away from those sessions and it's, all right, what is there a one-liner that stood out? And you'll appreciate this one, John, because you and I were sitting next to each other in the stands in Mobile watching TCU safety Bud Clark. And Bud Clark was one of the best safeties, one of the best defensive players down there. It felt like he was making plays on the ball every single day in practice. And so Bud Clark was asked about just his intensity during practice. And he was there was a game back in week 1 where TCU goes on the road against Bill Belichick and North Carolina, and he has a pick 6, and he does a celebration, kind of poking fun at Belichick, and he's asked about that, and he said, is there an art in trash talk? And he's like, oh, there's definitely an art, and I'm very fluent in trash talk. And it's like, I know you saw him daily up at the Senior Bowl or down at the Senior Bowl. He's got that edge to it, which is I enjoyed that one-liner.
Love it.
To this point of the guys you already talked to earlier, were there any guys who kind of disappointed you a little bit that you were like, you know what, I thought we were going to get some more pizzazz out of them, and for some reason they didn't have a lot of confidence in what they were saying?
No, not so much. This was a pretty impressive group overall. There were a couple guys. You guys know how it is. There's 8 podiums, and then there's 4 tables, or they're small off to the side. So there were a couple guys over on the smaller end, over by the tables that surprised me. Like Devin Moore from the corner from Florida is a guy that to me, like in a class that is devoid of a ton of blue chip talent. He's got blue chip talent. He's a big corner who moves really, really well. I think he's going to really impress out here on the turf at Lucas Oil Stadium. He was over there. He's a little bit soft-spoken, but typically what happens, some of the guys that aren't going to do great on the microphone, they'll put over there on the tables. So, no, I wasn't completely moved negatively from anybody today.
All right, so let's stick with the DB theme here, Fran. We haven't talked much about day 2 defensive backs. Who in that corner group and safety group in round 2? Right now, the Giants don't have a third-round pick, so they pick at 37. Who are some of the guys at safety at corner you might like around that area?
Yeah, to me, I really like Malik Muhammad, the corner from Texas, and this is a player that is not going to run super well. Like I don't know if he's going to time and what his time's going to look like here in Indianapolis, but I just see a really good football player. And when I think of Denard Wilson, I think of competitive, edgy DBs, like guys that are going to have that chip on their shoulder. And Malik Muhammad is absolutely a guy that is cut from that cloth. He plays with great energy and urgency. He's got ball skills. His instincts in zone and man are really strong. So to me, Malik Muhammad, you get into day 2. One of the guys I wrote down while studying him earlier this year was Kwame Lassiter. And Lassiter has turned into a really good player for the Houston Texans. And to me, I think when you look at Muhammad, he probably goes in that same range. He fell to the second round because he ran 4.6. And I think that when you're looking at Lassiter, he's turned out just fine despite that 40 time.
When we get a little deeper there, what about Cisse? What about Hood?
Yeah, I think Cisse, he's going to blow the doors off the testing this week. I think he's going to test really, really well. And I think that he'll be kind of more mentioned more often in that back end of round 1, early stage round 2. Obviously, we're talking Giants potentially at the top of the second round. I do think there's a chance that he could go a little higher. I think Hood is more likely to be available for the Giants in the second round. I think when you look at his size, I don't know that he's got like an A+ physical trait. He went down to the Senior Bowl. He's only a 1-year starter. I thought he was solid, but I didn't think he necessarily moved the needle down in Mobile. So I think when you're looking at Hood, he's got decent to below average size. I think the athleticism is going to be fine. I don't think he's going to test as well as Cisse, only a 1-year starter, like I said. So I think when you stack all of that up, I don't know that that's necessarily a profile that will definitely crack the top 30. So I think that he will almost certainly be available for the Giants there at the top of round 2.
How about the safety group? Is there a steep drop-off after those top 3? Do you think there's a top 3? How do you view this safety class once you get into that second round?
I actually think there's a top 4. Okay. I think that, to me, obviously, look, we Caleb Downs at the top. And then there's, I think you have the conversation there between Dylan Thieneman from Oregon, and then you have Emmanuel McNeil-Warren from Toledo. Different types of players, and so it comes down to what you're looking for your defense and what you want. With McNeil-Warren, he's bigger, longer, kind of a top-down safety. I don't know that he's going to necessarily match up in the slot. He wasn't asked to do that all that much at Toledo with tight ends. Like, he's not that kind of player. He's not Nick Emenwari in that way. I don't think he's going to test quite to that level, but I do think that he's got the ability to finish on the ball. I love the way he comes downhill and finishes as a tackler. He reminded me of Grant Delpit, who ended up being a second-round pick out of LSU and has turned into a good starting safety for the Cleveland Browns. I think that's kind of what you're getting there with McNeil-Warren. With Dylan Thieneman from Oregon, he's got a little bit more of a versatile skill set. This is a guy that's been used all across the formation over the course of his career, 2 different defensive systems between Purdue and then Oregon. Played a little bit more often in the slot this past year and showed some coverage chops there. But I think that he'll still be kind of viewed as more of a top-down safety, play over the top, make plays on the football. So more of your prototypical free safety type. The guy that I would kind of stick in there as well is A.J. Halsey from LSU, 4th-year player. He's played at 3 different schools. He was at New Mexico State, I believe, to start. Then he went to Houston, and then this past year at LSU, he's been extremely productive at all 3 stops. He's has the ability to play on the ball. Reminds me of Kevin Byard when Byard was coming out of Middle Tennessee. And when you saw Byard, his instincts in zone coverage were phenomenal. His ability to finish on the ball, he was a reliable tackler. And I think Halsey checks a lot of those same boxes. I don't know that he's going to test like a superb athlete, but he plays fast because of those instincts, that ability to finish on the ball. I would say it's maybe second to none in this class.
Fred, let me stick with defense for a minute. The Giants don't have a 3rd-round pick, okay? So if they don't get somebody to help their defense in rounds 1 or rounds 2, they're going to have to wait till round 4. Defensive line-wise, they still got to find a way to plug the run better. Is there a backup nose tackle who can spell Dexter Lawrence, or a 3 technique even, who is somewhat stout against the run that they might be able to get in the 4th?
Yeah, I think that this class, there's a good amount of those run-stuffing nose tackle types. And so when I think of, and not all of these guys are going to last to round 4, but when I think of Dominique Orange from Iowa State, I think of Kristen Miller from Georgia. Obviously, we talked about Dante Corleone from Cincinnati. I think he probably falls a little bit further than maybe what we expected going into the process. But there are a number of nose tackles in this class that I think, because you have the guys at the top. You have Caden McDonald from Ohio State. He's going to go early. You have Lee Hunter from Texas Tech. He's going to go early. So if teams are plugging that hole early on, I think that causes players like Orange to fall, like Kristen Miller to fall. So I do think that there are a number of players. Tim Keenan from Alabama is a player that a lot of people are really high on. He kind of fits that same archetype. So there are a number of run-stuffing nose tackles that I do think would fit in well there behind Dexter Lawrence.
You put up an interesting tweet the other day, friend, that got some people riled up. Is if you put anything on Twitter, you'll get some people riled up. If you say the sky is blue, people will yell at you. But
congrats to me, yeah.
Yeah, good job. So I thought it was interesting, though, and the general point you were making was about Mekhi Lemon. But I'm going to it isn't necessarily about the player. You said you can not run a really good 40 time and still make it. You can not be big and still make it. But it's hard to not be big and not run a good 40 time and not make it. So talk about that, and if there's any other thresholds at other positions. I think you do a good job of tracking this stuff historically, better than anyone really that we talk to about this stuff, that you keep an eye on this week for thresholds at position that really disqualifies guys for you.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, I look at the draft process, and we know it's an inexact science. It's a range of outcomes business, right? We look at all these players, and there's a potential for them to really hit, and they turn into really good players or great players, elite players, all pros. And then there's potential, these guys there's an element of bust, quote unquote, where he just does not work out. He flames out of the NFL. And so what determines which end of the outcome you're able to hit? I think at the end of the day, you're trying to see what are the chances? What's the probability of a guy being able to hit versus not? And someone brought up Mekhi Lemon to me. And I think when you look at Lemon, yeah, he is under 6 foot. We'll see what the official measurement is in the coming days. He is, under 180, under 200 pounds, or under right around 190, 195. Again, we'll get the official measurement here this week. He's not going to run. We already know that. He already said he's not going to run. So if Mekhi Lemon is small, and we'll see what he runs at the pro day, if he's on the slower side, there are not a lot of receivers that turn into elite players when you are both small and slow. That's just kind of how it's not impossible. But at the end of the day, if I'm talking range of outcomes, that just it's a very tight needle to thread. And I feel this way about basically every position. It's to me, I look at D'Angelo Pons. I love D'Angelo Pons on film. The corner from Indiana, junior, declared. He is going to be an extreme outlier from a size standpoint. We're talking like 5'8", like sub 180 pounds. He is extremely, extremely small, but he should test really well. This is a guy that was a state champion track athlete in the state of Florida. If he doesn't test well though at that size, that's context that's going to be required. Again, it's a tight needle to thread. So, I could say it about Mekhi Lemon, who I do have reservations about. To me, he looks more like a day 2 type of athlete than a round 1 type of athlete. But in this class, guys are going to get floated up the board.
All right, Fran, you're a Philly guy. Everybody knows that. And so the NFC East is obviously of a lot of interest to Giants fans. Now, there's this A.J. Brown thing going on with the Eagles as to whether or not they're going to move him or they're not. But with the wide receiver depth in this draft, do you think that makes the Eagles a little bit more inclined to potentially try to get a trade with Brown?
Yeah, to me, I lean like it's more likely than not that they do trade him. But I think at the end of the day, like, they don't want to, right? Like Howie Roseman, if he had his druthers, like, they don't want to trade A.J. Brown. He's not in the business of giving up good players. And so I do think that something ends up getting done just because it might be a little bit too far gone with how it's gone over the last couple of years. Despite him being productive, it's just been one thing after another. So I do think he probably is not going to end up here in Philadelphia at the end of the day. But yeah, like when you have the ability to go and acquire a solid receiver, in the first round or the second round of a draft, it'll depend on where they end up, who they end up trying to get there. You don't want to end up like Tennessee did, where John Robinson, they trade A.J. Brown, right, take that pick, and then they select Treylon Burks, and obviously that did not work out. And so, I don't think it'll be like a one-for-one type of situation. Now, for every one of those situations, there's Stephon Diggs, and that pick becomes Justin Jefferson. So maybe it goes in that way. But at the end of the day, yeah, I don't think they want to. But to me, it sounds like they're trying to get a deal done. See what offer they can get.
Fran, final question from me, and I'll stick with the Eagles. As interesting as the A.J. Brown thing is in terms of drama, I think how Jalen Hurts adjusts to this new McVay-style offense that the Eagles want to install here is really the more interesting story here, because he's always wanted to play a specific way, and I think fans always want to blame the OC there, and I still wonder, is it the OC or is it the quarterback? So how do you think that's going to work with Mannion coming in, trying to install this McVay-style system with Jalen Hurts as the quarterback?
It's honestly, it's going to be fascinating to study, and I think that it's not even just the Jalen Hurts of it all, which it is. I mean, to me, that's a huge part of it. But then when you also factor in A.J. Brown, is he here or is he not? Lane Johnson, is this the final year for Lane Johnson? Is this the final year for Landon Dickerson? Both guys pondered retirement this past year. You have a new
no more Stoutland.
You have a new offensive line coach in Jeff Stoutland. Dallas Goedert's a free agent. I don't think he's going to be back. So you're talking new tight end. And by the way, that whole tight end room is free agent, like that entire room. And they're going to have to remake it because they need guys that can block. And all three of them really struggled as blockers last year. You're talking about the receiver position. A.J. Brown, like I said, we talked about, Jahan Dotson, the third receiver. He's a free agent. So you talk about all that. Then you go over to defense, and you lose Christian Parker, the defensive back coach. He goes down to Dallas. But Reed Blankenship's a free agent. You don't have anybody right now that is ready to step in. Nakobe Dean was one of the heartbeats of that defense. He's a free agent. Probably not going to be bringing back because he just drafted Jahad Campbell. But you have Nolan Smith up for an extension soon. You have Jalen Carter up for an extension soon. Jordan Davis ready to be extended. Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell are eligible next year. So you have all these contracts, and you've got to make these decisions like who's going to stay, who's going to go. A lot of money that's going to get pushed into that side of the ball, which means they have to backfill with young offensive talent. It's good. They have a lot of really difficult decisions to make with the big picture in mind. But to your point, you're installing this new offense, and if it doesn't go well offensively, I think that seat's going to get really, really hot at the very top of the coaching staff. So it's going to be fascinating here. The next, we'll say it's 11 months here in Philadelphia.
And by the way, they don't have a lot of cap space, and the way they structure their contracts, it's hard for them to create more cap space because they have already spread that money out anyway. So you're right, Fran. I don't know how they're going to handle this in the offseason. It'll be very fun to watch.
Fran, feel free to clean house down in Philly. I know I speak for everybody in New York.
Fran, before we stick up. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's going to be fun, guys. It's going to be fun. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, do me a favor. Tell the folks where they can find all your great work, Fran.
Yeah, you can follow me up on Twitter, social media, F Duffy NFL on Twitter, but you can follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram. But everything that we have the Die Hard Draft Guide, the All NFL Draft newsletter, the All NFL Draft podcast. That's where you can get all my draft content.
And he's awesome. Fran, good stuff, man. Enjoy Indy. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, guys. Talk soon.
That's Fran Duffy down at the Combine in Indianapolis. We thank him for joining us right here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Don't forget, folks, looking for more than just a ticket, Elevate Experiences delivers VIP access to the world's biggest events. From the Super Bowl to NASCAR to PGA Tour tournaments, don't just attend, elevate the experience at elevateexperiences.com. We continue our cavalcade of draft experts and gurus, and one of the guys that we have join us every year does a fantastic job. Used to be Trevor Sikkema's colleague over at Pro Football Focus. Now he is part of CBS and their great coverage of the NFL Draft on CBS Sports. The one and only Mike Renner. Mike, welcome to the show, my friend. Hope all your interviews and stuff over at that gigantic CBS set are going well today.
It's going great. It's been a fun time so far. I want to see you guys work out, though. The lead-up's always too much.
Who have you talked to? And has anyone you talked to one-on-one really struck you as like, wow, all right, this guy's really impressed me a little bit?
That's the thing. I haven't actually talked to anyone here. They got Rand Carthon doing the interviews this year.
Oh, no!
I've been relegated to the subset, so I've been just listening to him.
All right, fair enough. All right, how about the podiums? Has anyone struck you at the podiums that's like, all right, this is someone that really has impressed me in terms of how they're thinking and talking about the game?
Honestly, I don't have, no. I haven't listened to enough, though, so I have to plead ignorance on this one. Sorry.
All right, Giants at 5, Mike. Very interesting draft. We've talked about it a lot. Different type of draft, position value, all that type of stuff. It's just a different type of group. How would you sort through this in terms of sorting position value, need, but more importantly, just finding the best guy in what's, I'll call it, an eclectic group at the top of this draft?
Yeah, I think that's very fair to say. They're an eclectic group. I would sort through it like this. You're not anticipating to draft number 5 overall anytime soon, right? Like, you're hoping things go the way you think they're going to go. This is your one swing of the bat. And so in my head, I'm thinking, what positions can you not get outside the top 5 traditionally? What positions can you not get outside the top 10? And those are things like pass rusher. Those are things like offensive tackle. And those are probably, and quarterback, right? Obviously they don't need a quarterback, but like, that's like kind of the world you live in the NFL, is that the elite ones tend to go at that point in the draft. So that's where I'm looking, is those 2 positions. Even though you got a log jam at edge, you see in that division, you can, with the Philadelphia Eagles, you can never have too many guys there. And I think there is obviously the need with the Giants for that right tackle position. So yeah, there's some other great players at lesser valued positions, but you can find linebackers, safeties, interior offensive linemen more often than not later in the draft. You can't find offensive tackles that are elite outside the first round more often than not.
So you kind of answered the question that I'm about to ask you, Mike, because I'm looking at your latest big board, and you've got offensive tackle Caden Proctor out of Alabama, who is a mountain of a man at like 360-something pounds, in your top 5. And I can honestly tell you, all the different people we've talked about, I don't remember seeing Proctor in anybody else's top 5. So please, if you can, explain away.
I just think he is incredibly physically gifted. I mean, I think everyone thinks that, though. Like, it's easy to see on his tape that for a 360-pound guy, he has special movement skills. And I lean on the fact that he's young. He's improved every single year, even like last year, from beginning of the season to the end of the season. He doesn't turn 21 until June. And so if you have a guy who's that special physically, and he's only gotten better, and again, you can expect a good amount of development when he is that young still, I'll bet on what he can be. And I think what sets him apart from a lot of these other big tackles that have maybe struggled in the NFL is he has such good balance. He has such good balance and has been tested a bunch. This is not old Alabama. This is Kalen DeBoer's Alabama, and they pass. He drops back. He does what you're going to need to do at the NFL level. So I think he'll be a much different player 3 years from now than he is right now, and I think that player could be an all-pro.
So let's take an offensive tackle, Mike, because I think, and this is why I love having you on, because your rankings a lot of times are different and unique, and I think that's good. You don't get sucked into, groupthink on this sort of stuff. And you have Francis Mauigoa all the way down to number 20. You not only have Caleb Fano that far ahead of him, but also Spencer Fano, but also his teammate Caleb Lomu ahead of him. So your thoughts on how you stacked up these guys at offensive tackle?
Yes, for me, Mauigoa I see more guard traits on tape than I see a tackle.
So do I.
Best in a phone booth. I think his best reps, he gets his hands on guys pretty much at the snap. And what he does, I think he's awesome. And I think he can be a great guard at the NFL level. But I think there's a big difference between how I see him in a phone booth and how I see him out in space. And I think that Miami offense did a great job of protecting both their tackles, right? Because the guy on the left side was like 350. Markel Bell was a phone booth sort of player as well, whether it was through the quick passing game, through a lot of screens, that when he had to really deal with speed, that was when I saw issues with him on tape. So, I mean, 20th overall, I still think he's a very good prospect, but I just don't think he's this slam dunk tackle prospect. I saw issues with him in pass pro on the edge.
So how about Fano and Lomu? Why do you like them?
Yeah, so with Fano, he has the best mirror in this draft class. His feet are awesome.
I agree.
I think that is something that historically for me, I've always coveted. It's why, going back to, not to rub this one in, but 2022, I had Charles Cross OT1 over guys like Kevin Neal, Nick Ekwonu. He moves the best, and that is 9 times out of 10 the guy that ends up being the best offensive tackle at the next level, because you see what edge rushers look like. I mean, they run 4.4s nowadays. So you have to be able to match that speed, and if you can't, you're in trouble, and he can. So I loved what I saw from him on tape. I love what he does in the running game. I think in a zone scheme, he'll be excellent. The arm length is a little concerning, but I think he does well enough to mitigate it that I'll buy into what that guy is. I think he's just a really high floor player with a pretty sizable ceiling too.
Want to ask you about the guy. Go ahead.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Just Lomu, just real quickly. I think he is the most coordinated of these guys. You see his hands and feet work in unison extremely well. He has one just like obvious Achilles heel to him. It's his play strength, but he's young too. He's a junior coming out. That's one thing physically that we've seen a bunch of guys improve upon in their NFL careers. It's the one thing that can be changed. So if he just gets to a baseline of NFL strength, I think he'll be a good pass protector.
He reminds me of Colton Miller. You talk about a guy with great athleticism that lacked play strength coming out, kind of that type of guy.
I agree with that. Number 9 on your list, Jamad McCoy, the corner out of Tennessee. We know how great he looked before he ripped his ACL. Now, obviously, you're putting him there because you believe that he's going to be great. He's going to check all his medicals, and you're going to expect to see the player we saw a couple of years ago.
And by the way, there are reports that he will not test at the combine. He's going to wait for his pro day.
That's why I want to ask Mike about it, because while, Mike, you may have great expectations for him, how skeptical do you think some of the NFL teams are, especially since they may not get enough of information this week in Indy?
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who ideally I wouldn't even rank right now, right? It doesn't even, you just don't know, right? And NFL teams, I'm guessing they have him off in his own section until they go and see him work out on a football field. You're not going to just, if he doesn't do anything pre-draft, he goes from like 9 on my board to like the 20s, because this is a long time now. Because he didn't tear his ACL during the season. It was last January. So that's why I'm not worried about him not coming back healthy. And with ACL tears, they haven't been the death knell in like forever, seemingly. So if he gets clean bill of health, if he tests at his pro day and he moves like the guy we saw as a sophomore, that tape was special tape for a sophomore cornerback. It looked like guys like Patrick Surtain, Derek Stingley did in their sophomore seasons, So I put him in that realm of prospect. We just didn't get to see the next step from him. And obviously that's why I don't feel as confident about him as I felt about those guys, but I still think he is a special prospect nonetheless.
So you're the perfect guy to talk to, Mike, because I've been trying to figure out, because, I like you, I want to try to get the best player at the most valuable position at 5 for the Giants, and I'm trying to figure out reasons why I shouldn't consider Mansour Delane at that spot. You have him ranked 14th, so you like him as a player, but he's the 3rd cornerback on your list. So what are your doubts about Delane as we head into the combine after what was just an exquisite year on tape where really no one could catch the ball on his side of the field?
Yeah, I guess I don't have that many doubts. I just have him 3rd because he's not the specimen that the 2 guys in front of him are.
That's fair.
Think like Ron McCoy is obviously like a size speed. Like he has the prototypical wingspan of a corner. Avion Terrell I have ahead of him because he is just one of the most lightning quick corners that I've seen, and just a dog on tape. Mansour, it's just he doesn't have a great frame. He doesn't have great elite speed, and that's splitting hairs, but those things are impactful once you get to the next level. Those can limit your ceiling of who you are, but I still think he's a high floor cornerback. And if you need one and you draft one, you'll probably be happy with that guy.
I'm interested if you could poke some holes in Caleb Downs for us, because a lot of folks really think he could be one of the top 2 or 3 players in the draft, and certainly maybe the Giants would be lucky to have a shot at him at 5. You have him a tad lower than that, if you could.
Yeah, I think it is the frame. There's never been a top 10 safety in the modern era that looks the way he does. We haven't had measurables on him yet, but I'm guessing it's somewhere under 5'11" and under 200 pounds, which is just, everyone else. You kind of average up the top half of the first round safeties, and it's like 6'2", 210 is your, it's the prototype is what it looks like at that, and he's never going to be that. So is he limited? Is he not going to be as effective in the box as he was in college? I still trend more towards, hey, he was so good on tape, such a leader, so gifted athletically, tackles well, just ticks every box that you want to see. And I think his skill set could play in the slot as well, which I think is a very valuable role in today's NFL, maybe even more valuable than safety. So for all those reasons, I'd still draft him highly. It's just kind of off the top. I have him down a little bit because it is a safety and he doesn't fit the prototype.
So how much did it kill you inside and crush your heart to have to rank running back Jeremiah Love, fellow Golden Domer, all the way down at 16? Like, did you survive that? Did you have to take a nap afterwards? Like, how'd you handle that?
I was trying to spare him this question. I didn't want him to bleed.
Hey, it helped me that the next running back I could rank was also a Domer.
That's true. Yes.
Back to back.
Yes.
And I said it in. I said it mid-season. I was like, I think we could have 2005 Auburn situation on our hands. Now, I don't think it's going to be that high when Cadillac Williams and Ronnie Brown both went top 5, but I think Jaron Price could slip into the first round too. I think he's a very, very good running back that is quite easily the running back 2 in this draft class. But I had to be honest. I had to rank my board the way I always do and take running back value into account here, even if I didn't want to, and even if I know that he's going higher than that in the real draft.
So just real quick, pure grade. I'm going to take position stuff out of this, Mike. If we're just looking at pure grade and you were to redo your board based on pure grade, who would be like your top 5 guys?
Yes, so I think Caleb Downs has the highest grade I've given to anyone. Jeremiah Love is right up there.
Okay.
Then Ruben Bane. And honestly, Vega Ioane I love at guard. So I'm trying to think who would be 5 on me. Styles is yes. Okay. I knew I was forgetting something. Sonny Styles would be up there too. So that's why it's kind of a weird class. It's like those are the positions you really draft that highly, but those are all very good prospects, those 5.
Now, out of curiosity, because we got to run, but we were talking about Ruben Bane earlier in the show with your former colleague, Trevor Sikkema, and obviously we knew his arms were not going to be long, but how important to you leaving Bane at 2, which is where you have him and where Trevor had him 2 on his board?
He did.
His testing numbers, right? Because I don't think you see that some of the elite bendiness and speed rush to the outside on tape, combine that with the arm length, does that give you some doubt despite the fact he was such a productive player on tape?
Yeah, obviously, I just want him to be like above average. And you always adjust for weight, right? He's a stocky dude. 6'2",
he's 270.
260. Yeah, 6'2", and the 270 is a lot different than even 6'5", 270. And it's just, there's guys playing at that in the defensive interior of the NFL nowadays. Like that's the body type that is that. So it's going to look different, and it's the testing numbers you're going to have to then adjust because of that. But I just want to see a well-rounded athlete. That's, I think, the bigger thing. And because I do see that. I don't think he's super bendy, but I think he can maneuver enough to, rip to the edge and get back to the quarterback. So, yeah, you always, if you're going to be drafting a guy that highly specifically on the edge, you want to see something special in his profile, whether it's, maybe just 40 bench reps or something like that would convince me too. But I need to see something from him.
Good stuff.
Mike, good stuff, my friend. Tell the folks where they can find all your great content.
For sure, fellas. You can follow me on X at Mike Renner _ or Pushing the Pile Podcast, where you find all my takes. Awesome stuff, Mike. Enjoy Indy for us, and we'll talk to you soon, bud.
Good to see you.
Will do. You guys take it easy.
Mike Renner does a great job covering the NFL draft and the NFL for CBS. His big board just went up there a couple of days ago, so make sure you go check it out.
And I love what you said, John, because I had not looked at his big board until just as we were doing the show, because I don't want to get too predictable.
Of course.
I want to see something that instinctively is going to make me ask him a question. And you're right. His big board is quite different than most of the folks that we have talked to or that we have even spoken to within the last couple of weeks.
No, it is very different. And I think, seeing those unique takes and the reasons for them, I think it's important. And Mike thinks about things a little bit differently, which I think is definitely good to hear, and getting different takes in terms of how, and he clearly is a position value guy.
Oh, there's no doubt.
And that drives him and how he thinks about it. And also traits. He's a traits guy. He's a traits and position value guy, so that really drives the way he thinks about things. All right, let's jump back to Indianapolis. We welcome in our colleague here at the New York Football Giants, Madeline Burke. Mads, how are you?
What's up, fellas? I'm okay. I'd be better if you guys were here too. It's really sad for me to look at you guys back in the studio, but you know what? I'm trying to do it, represent all of us out here.
And we appreciate that. So you've done a really good job kind of traveling the podiums over the last 2 days, Mads. You can start wherever you like. Who has jumped out at you? What guys have really kind of made a mark listening to them at the podium, trying to get a feel for this draft class?
Yeah, I mean, I know you guys have gotten deep into the weeds with what these guys offer on the field and watching their tape and all that, but there's a lot of really good stories on some of these guys too. And one of the guys that stands out to me, Michigan tight end Marlon Klein, he moved to the United States when he was 15 years old from Germany to play football. He grew up, in Germany, playing soccer a little bit, but really fell in love with football. And he said, he was like, I left my entire life behind, my family, my friends, just to chase my dream to play football, and didn't even speak English. He said Google Translate was his best friend that first year, trying to figure out how to do this. And now here he is at the NFL Combine, which I thought that was an incredible story.
Someone get Marcus Kuhn out there. Someone get Marcus Kuhn out there to talk to that man. What are we doing here?
What are we doing here as well? DJ Rogers, the tight end from TCU, he grew up in Jamaica. He also moved to the United States when he was young. Didn't even start playing football until 6th grade. He was playing cricket and soccer growing up, but fell in love with the competitive nature of football too. So these kind of guys who were late arriving into this game and now find themselves at the NFL Combine is fantastic. There are a couple of players. I know Bud Clark is a guy that you've had your eye on, Schmeelk, and he is just full of personality and passion. And he talks about how when he was born, he came out of the womb and he was a code blue, which means he was not alive when he was born. They had to resuscitate him. And he says, I'm not supposed to be here. But it's like he plays and he lives his life as every day as a gift. He's super passionate, talks a lot of trash, has a big personality. And he says, I get it from my mom. And someone asked him, well, how would your mom cover a tight end? He goes, she can. And if she couldn't, she'd figure it out. So he's got a lot of personality too. And then, of course, the big draw for today, Caleb Downs. Really confident guy. And confident in a way that comes from his preparation, not, any arrogance or what have you, but he goes, hey, I know I'm able to play multiple positions. I can play in the box. I can play in the deep part of the field. I can play nickel or dime. I'm unique in that way. And my confidence comes from just how prepared I am. Anytime I step onto the field, I know that I'm ready. I was talking to a friend and colleague of mine who I work with at CBS Sports, Bryant McFadden, who has known him for a really long time, and has said, you know what, this is a guy, he's so unique because he's such a dog on the field, but he's also just a kind, nice guy, and nice in a way that doesn't make him soft, but just he's such a nice guy off the field. And oftentimes you'll see, maybe a really nice guy can be a little, less of a dog on the field, but he's just so impressed with him. And, the way he carried himself at the podium today, I think left a lot of people impressed.
Madeline, let me ask you about the eye test, since you've had a chance to see all these guys at the podium. Every year we go out there and we see some guys who are a lot smaller and a lot slighter than we thought. And
Downs might be one of those guys,
right?
By the way.
We're like, I don't know about that. And then there are other guys who look gargantuan, and we're like, look at that condominium. Anybody that fits those descriptions for you?
I don't know that there's anybody that has jumped off the field in that regard. I think people kind of feel like they take up the presence as expected of their given positions. I think they all, and whether it's physically or physically met with the way they carry themselves, there hasn't been a wow yet. Now, tomorrow we'll see some of the offensive linemen, so that might change. But yeah, so far I feel like there hasn't been a complete sticker shock guy that I can think of right off the bat.
Now you're tall. How often do you just walk up to these guys and be like, I don't think you're tall enough?
It is funny because I'm 5'11" and I wear heels pretty much every day too. So I'm walking around here at 6'1". However, the benefit that they have is they're all on risers. So I'm not, they've got like 2 feet on me off the bat. So I'm like, I can't really tell where we are eye to eye, because we all know these guys are listed as a certain height, and then, side by side, that's a little questionable.
Is a final one for me, Madeline. As far as the scuttlebutt around the convention center, is there anything specifically that you're hearing people talk about the Giants that you would want to let us share in on?
Well, there is obviously, speaking of Caleb Downs and his impression that he made today, there's a lot of conversation around, is that a potential interest? Could a team take a safety at 5, the positional value? And Downs talked about that. He said, hey, position aside, if you're affecting the game and affecting the defense and you're the best player on the field, that's what matters. He was asked, are you the best player on the field? He took a moment and he said, yeah. And there are, you look at the Giants roster, that safety isn't really a position where there's a glaring vacancy, but people have said, and regardless of position, people have said you don't pass on a great player just because you have a good one. So whatever the thinking is in the front office, and again, that's above my pay grade, but whatever the thinking is there, it seems to me that the mindset and the conversation, especially in terms of how it pertains to the Giants, is, there's a lot of questions about how this new coaching staff, how this new structure is going to be evaluating what the needs are and what the priorities are when it comes to this draft class. But if a player is potentially a gold jacket wearing player, that's something you got to consider at 5.
Final one for me, Mads. Paul asked about the Giants. I'll ask generally NFL speaking. What's kind of been, last year was Stafford, right? Everyone's asking, where's Stafford going? He's staying, is he going? Are there guys or topics around the league that have been a constant source of conversation and conjecture there? We did have a trade today, a very rare player for player trade, Jermaine Johnson for Tavondre Sweat, which no one had really talked about. But anything that out there from a larger league perspective that's really been the focus of conversation?
Yeah, that 1-for-1 trade was a big stirring point around the media this morning, which is interesting. You don't often see just a straight up player swap. No. Quarterbacks has been the topic, whether it be what's going to happen with Tua and the Dolphins, what's going on with Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. Those conversations and the positing and confusion a little bit around, we heard earlier this week, there was conversations, Kyler, we've talked a lot. And then there's reports that they haven't been in communication. So what is actually the story there? But I would say that is a theme of conversations around the league in terms of, some big headline quarterbacks, because a lot of people are of the belief, if you've got a quarterback, you're good. But if you've got a quarterback that you're ready to move on from, that's a big problem.
And there are a number of teams with big gaping holes at that position this offseason as well. So there will be some competition for finding those guys. All right, Madeline, tell the folks what you're kind of doing out there for the Giants, what they can expect from you, what you're sending back, and anything else that you have on your mind that's going on in Indy.
Well, let's see. I have yet to get the shrimp cocktail, unfortunately, because our team dinner Monday didn't happen and we're just running around. But you know what? Tonight I will find my way to a shrimp cocktail. So rest assured. And we'll be sending back a lot of stuff. I've sent Maz quite a few clips for some social stuff going on here. We are a little bit shorthanded. So some of the stuff that we'd usually be producing from here, we're not, but there's going to be quite a few social videos and conversations from some of the prospects and some of the insiders around the league. So stay tuned to Giant Social for all that.
Oh, and by the way, I think her playbook and Diana Rossini's going up today, Madeline. So why don't you give people a little tease for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Diana Rossini, who is a dear friend, an insider. She covers the NFL for The Athletic. She talks about her career journey, how she, found her dream job at ESPN and then left her dream job to move on to The Athletic, the challenges of being a newsbreaker and some of the things that, okay, I hear this, but can I say this out loud? Or, being somebody who becomes the story as well. And also the challenges of balancing motherhood. I mean, you guys know this. Diana has covered multiple NFL seasons, very pregnant, but kept that a secret on television, and just balancing all of that and what goes into that with just being a newsbreaker and an insider in the NFL. It's a great conversation. I really loved this episode. So that's going to be going up later today as well.
Yeah, she's in double toddler land, which is a very difficult place to be in. Especially, I don't have nearly as intensive a job as she does with everything she has going on. I don't know how she does it. God bless her, because it cannot be easy.
One day, right before she was set to deliver one of the children, she was doing sidelines at a Giants game. And I don't know.
You ran her over? You ran into her?
I was afraid she was going to deliver right there before kickoff.
Paul, you were there. It would have been fine. You would have handled the whole thing. It would have been okay.
She is a trooper.
She is a very impressive human and incredibly good at her job, and it's such a great story. And I really enjoyed this conversation, so I hope everyone does too when they listen to the newest episode of her playbook.
Madeline, enjoy Indy for us. I would tell you to go order the prime rib for me, but I'm just not sure that's a great idea.
I don't know if anyone can tackle the prime rib like John Schmeelk can. It is like watching an episode of Man versus Meat, and honestly, man prevails every time.
The Flintstones too. Like if you go back to the Flintstones when they used to feed Fred the big piece of meat, that's basically
it's
what
very
it was.
dangerous. Not a good thing. No,
it's
Madeline,
dangerous, but this man conquers it.
Good stuff. Have fun. We appreciate the time as always.
Thank you. Thanks, you guys.
That's Madeline Burke. Safe travels coming home, Mads. Looking forward to see you back here in the Tri-State area. That's all the time we have for this episode of Big Blue Kickoff Live. It's all presented by Citizens, the official bank. Presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. Citizens is the Giants Huddle podcast.
Indeed.
We recorded that earlier. We got a lot of sponsors.
We did.
What do you want me to do?
We got a lot going on here, folks.
Okay. We're here in the Hackensack Green Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. For Paul Dottino, I'm John Schmeelk. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk about the testing that's going to start at 3 o'clock today. We'll have a bunch of really good guests coming up tomorrow. We have Jordan Reed from ESPN. We have Connor Rogers coming up tomorrow. We have Cynthia Freeland coming up tomorrow. And I'm trying to remember who the fourth guest is off the top of my head, and I'm struggling with it off the top. Pierce, if you can figure it out, let me know. You should all go check out the Giants Huddle podcast. Pat Kerwin's going up today, former NFL coach and general manager from SiriusXM, Moving the Chains. That's their afternoon drive show on SiriusXM. And then on Friday, we're going to have Greg Cosell from NFL Films and the NFL Matchup Show. So that's what we have coming up. Check out all of our content. We've tried to churn out as much as we usually do, even though we are not out there this week. Hope you're enjoying it. I know we are. Thanks so much for being with us, and we will see you tomorrow for one more Big Blue Kickoff Live at noon. Until then, we'll talk to you then.